The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments be directed to the show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. We'll learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward doesn't have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divya.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divya.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now, here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning, listeners. So thrilled to be here with y'all and super excited. We have a very, very interesting show for y'all today. So, one of you who have got our books, because the profits from our book are going to kiva.org, partial profits, and we are making a difference across the globe in entrepreneurs' lives. So if you have not had a chance to get your copy, get a copy of either Expert to Influencer that's going to help you become the influencer you desire to be and position yourself for meaningful impact. And if you're looking to transition into becoming an entrepreneur, or even if you're looking to bring an entrepreneurial mindset in the corporate world, or regardless, if you want to bring that in your personal life, then the Entrepreneur's Garden is for you. And as always, I invite you to spend 1 hour of your time every month without any strings attached and help someone out. Just help them. And you can spread out that 1 hour throughout the month, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. Just do something. All right, let's bring our guest on, John Christmas. Welcome, John.
Hello, Divya. Thank you for inviting me on Beyond Confidence.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. So, John, do you recall any moment from your childhood that stands out for you even today?
Some of this is what we're going to talk about is Latvia. And when I was a child, I used to go to a Latvian American summer camp in Michigan and had certain ideas about how the world was going to be and what was going to happen in the future and all these things that were basically from this camp. And my ideas about a lot of things have been turned upside down since that time. But no, this camp was about simple stuff like catching frogs by the lake. And but it's turned into something way more complicated than that now.
So if you're open to answering, curious, what was it about Latvian summer camps that your parents decided to send you there?
Well, my mother was born in Latvia, so that was the reason. My father's not Latvian, but my mother was born there. And then at that time, it was part of the Soviet Union, and therefore it was not possible for American Latvians to go there or for Latvian Latvians to come to America. So at that time, it was something about keeping the culture alive in the United States, even while the country was occupied.
Okay, no, that definitely makes sense. So now, as you were growing up, besides catching frogs, that seems the pastime of most kids during summertime. I mean, not everyone, but there are quite a few who love to capture frogs, and I've had personal experience of that. What else did you learn over there?
At the summer camp? Well, we had a lot of expectations. We had an expectation about what would happen in the future if the Soviet Union would break up. And our hopes for Latvia would be that, it would turn into another Sweden or another Finland, or it would be like the United States. I mean, the Latvian people in the United States do very well, actually. And Michigan is not entirely different from Latvia in terms of forests and lakes and the climate. And it's a similar place, sort of a similar environment where we were. But then we had this idea of, the possibilities of the country if the country would become independent again, which were not realized. But in fact, at that time, we also used to think that the camp would close down if Latvia would become independent, because there would be no purpose for having the camp anymore. Although now the camp is thriving. I think it has twice as many people as it had before, but with a lot of Latvians emigrating. But anyway, at that time, we had certain ideas about how the future could be without the Soviet Union.
Got it. Got it. So as you grew up, tell me, what were your inclinations? And when you were a young child, did you have any desire to become or go in a certain
Well, I
profession?
wanted to be a businessman. I wanted to be a successful businessman. It was partly because I had material goals, also partly because I'm gifted at math. I mean, certain things like finance and accounting are very natural and easy for me. I studied economics when I was younger. So I had an idea to be a banker, to be some kind of a businessman going forward, like in the future.
Hmm. So I'm assuming that you geared towards education that helped you achieve that goal.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had a regular education in elementary school, high school, in the Chicago area. And then I studied economics in college, and I also have an MBA degree. And so that's where I was doing economics and finance. Um, yeah, and then that led to a series of banking jobs in the beginning in the United States.
Mm.
Even before I finished college, I had some internships. So I had a couple summers where I was putting on a suit and going downtown in Chicago and working internships at banks.
And how did it feel different or similar to college life?
Well, it felt very different. Actually, the transition from being a college student, being casual with my baseball hat on every day, going to class and ripped up jeans or short pants when it was warm outside, to having a suit on every day was quite a transition. And in fact, this is another thing where I see just the way that trends have gone since that time. At the beginning of banking and putting on a suit every day and going on the train downtown and going to an office building downtown in Chicago to the bank had a certain feel to it, where you had this feeling of pride to be wearing a suit and to be going to the bank. And I'm not sure anymore, after all the banking scandals that have transpired, that so many people are wearing suits anymore, no matter what their job is, or even that they want to be necessarily identified as bankers. But for sure, at that time, it was a good feeling. I mean, also it was involvement with local chambers of commerce and with Rotary clubs and with the various, the business community, because the bank was funding the businesses, and then you're part of what makes the entire economy grow. And there was some kind of good feeling about that.
Right. You feel that you're making a difference as well, helping the community grow.
Well, sure. I always found it to be a positive thing, because I could point to, for example, I could drive around town and there were certain projects where I was the loan officer responsible for that project, where I could say, you see that plant over there, or you see that new condominium building over there, that I'm the loan officer who helped to make that happen.
Yeah, no, definitely. And there's a lot of pride involved in that, seeing something tangible go up as a result of your interaction in that project. So now, as your life moved through, tell us what transpired next.
Well, if I get to how this Latvia thing, how I even got into that in the first place, it's again, I had this family connection with Latvia, and I went there a few times before I started working for the bank in Latvia that eventually led to this book. But my first contacts in Latvia were through the American Chamber of Commerce there. So there were some Americans there who had Latvian background, and that's the reason they wound up there. And there were other Americans there who had no connection, no family connection with Latvia, but they wound up there anyway because for some business opportunity, or sometimes it's because they found a Latvian girlfriend. I mean, there could be different reasons for this. But anyway, that was the same kind of excitement there at the American Chamber of Commerce in Latvia, was that, the country has been in captivity for decades. Now it's independent and democratic and has a chance to make something of itself. I mean, we can see the economy grow from a backward state to an advanced state, and we can be part of this. So there was this kind of excitement there as well. But that's where I met the bank that wound up hiring me.
And then what happened?
Well, I met a person who was a senior person at the largest bank in Latvia. And he was telling me about how the bank had a reputational problem, which I was aware of, which was rumors that they were the Russian mob. And all sorts of other things, like they controlled the government, or that the corruption in the country ran through that bank, or that they were laundering money from people in Russia. That these were the rumors. And then what the bankers told me, that guy and the other people I met from the bank, is that they needed a Western person who could be their spokesperson when they talk with Western banks, to make the Western banks comfortable that they're doing everything properly. They have proper corporate governance, they have proper anti-money laundering controls. Part of the reason it was easy for them to convince me of this is that the bank had an auditor that was a Western auditor, and the bank was rated by ratings agencies, which were Western ratings agencies. They had a few other Western people at the bank who they had hired already. So it seemed to me that if I could count on the auditor, could count on the ratings agency, and could count on what I had heard, that I was not told that they were all crooks. I was told that this bank is being run legally, and maybe years ago, maybe some bad things happened. But anyway, currently it's being run legally, that everything is done the way that it's supposed to do. So that was how they got me.
Okay, got it. And curious, before you joined the bank, had you heard any of these rumors?
Yeah, it was a all-pervasive rumor in Latvia that this bank was the Russian mafia. That's what people would say. If you would be out having a drink with some people in a casual setting where everyone was a friend and they weren't speaking on the record, but they were speaking off the record, what people said is, this bank is the mafia.
And when you had heard the rumors, did you have any hesitation joining the bank initially, or you were like, everybody?
Well, part of it is I admit that it's the only offer I got from there, and it was an opportunity for me to do something different with my life. And I had been always in America and having some normal education and normal jobs in America. It was a very exciting opportunity. They offered a salary, which was more or less like an American salary, that was very hard to get in Latvia. So it sounded in the beginning like this great opportunity. I mean, maybe I've turned it into this anyway, a great opportunity, but in a different way. That I could go back to Latvia, I mean, the land of my ancestors. I could be involved in the economic rebirth of Latvia, and I could do this and get a normal salary at the same time. So this was part of the attraction.
Got it. So as you became the Western spokesperson, then tell us the entire story as to what happened.
Well, so I would have these meetings. I went to some conferences outside of Latvia, but most of my meetings were inside Latvia, where counterparty banks like British or German or Italian banks or American would come to Riga, the capital of Latvia. I'd have a meeting with them in the conference room. They would express what types of things we could do together. For example, we could use them for United States dollars payments, correspondent accounts. We could also do various trading with them. There were different ways that we could cooperate together with a Western bank. And the idea is that they wanted to get comfortable with whoever they were going to use as their partners in Eastern Europe, that that the bank was being run properly and they weren't going to get liability to themselves if they had a relationship with us. So I would sit down with them. It happened sometimes that that the people across the table from me came right out in the beginning and said, "We heard a rumor that your bank is the Russian mafia in Latvia." And what I would say back to that is, like, look, I would say truthfully, look, from what I've seen so far, they appear to be working properly as a bank should. I mean, the corporate governance, for example, the system of committees and management was done using best practice. There is an anti-money laundering function at the bank, which is also done according to best practice, or that's what they told me. So I, excuse me, had excellent success at this for the time up until I became jaded because I learned some certain things that were going inside the bank. But at the beginning of this, I was very good at this. I have a presence or a personality that when the Western people talked with me, they trusted me completely and they would right away set up a relationship with the bank. So I was doing quite well with that. But then the scary part was that I started attending some internal meetings at the bank where I heard certain things that they were talking about, like certain frauds that were on our balance sheet. That was one example. And also certain relationships we had with people who are oligarchs. I had notorious oligarchs who all sorts of rumors would surround that all their money was stolen, that they were bribing and killing people. This is the sort of people we had as some of our clients. So this was disturbing to me. But then there was a process as I sort of learned about more and more things, and also that these things were not things that were being phased out, but rather things that were increasing every year, that I felt I just had been used as a front, and that it was my duty not to be involved in this anymore, because I didn't come to the country to become corrupt and to help to ruin everything. I came there to try to make things better. So there was some kind of a turning point where I had heard enough different things that I decided that I need to report this.
And where did you report it?
Well, there's a whole series of things. In fact, in the book, which we're going to get to at the end, the protagonist is based on me, and you can see that quite obviously because it's an American Latvian from Chicago who works at a bank and gets recruited to work at this bank in Riga. So that character is pretty much me, although details surrounding me, we put in, certain action and romance into the book, which is not the real story because it's a fictionalized version. The other characters in the book are fictionalized. They're loosely based on anecdotal things that happened in real life, but the characters, what they do, what their names are mixed up in such a way that you would not be able to identify any other character to be reflective of a real person. But anyway, there was a series of things where I went to one organization with the information and I was sure they would do something with it. And then they would betray me and wind up covering it up and continuing as if they hadn't heard the information. Then I went to another organization, did the same thing, and they again reacted the same way. And then I went to another organization and another organization. It was a series of things. It was an experience, I'll tell you, that very few business people have had. I had meetings with FBI agents. I had meetings with Russian intelligence. There were certain people who I knew who were reputed to be mafia. There was a whole series of things, like even afterward, after the whistleblowing, meetings with the FBI. So I went through, and I left the country also. This is something in the book, we made it more dramatic than it was in the real story. In the real story, when all this was happening, I just bought a plane ticket and I left and I never went back there again. But in the book, we put the character through a lot of conflict and chases in order to get out of the country. But for me, it was just an airplane ticket, and I'm wise enough not to go back there again. But it was a series of betrayals, which psychologically had an effect on me, that a lot of people who I thought would be my friends or supporters, or not even that, a lot of people who I thought were just honest generally and interested in the well-being of the society turned out not to be that way, or at least when they got scared, they were not that way. A person who might talk all the time about how they're opposed to corruption, when they're actually faced with a real situation, collapses and goes over to the other side, sort of, or pretends not to know about certain things that they do know about. It was a very interesting lesson in human behavior that the series of betrayals and all of this. And it was, I mean, it had psychological impact on me for sure. I mean, I felt terrified and depressed all at the same time, that I couldn't believe how this whistleblowing played out. But this is where we'll get to later, how I've turned this around now into this book project.
So that's definitely very fascinating. How did your family handle this? And was there any fear about any rhetoric being issued or any lashback to yourself and your family?
Different family members reacted differently. And one thing is, I did not think that this was going to be dragged out into the battle that it was. I thought that once information was out that this bank was a pyramid fraud and had relationships with certain organized crime figures, that I thought the bank was going to collapse in a day. I thought that the Western auditor was going to abandon them. I thought that the Western ratings agencies were going to abandon them. I thought that the Western banks that were doing business with them were going to abandon them. Some of them did, but most of them chose the other path to basically tell me they don't want to hear about this and they don't want to know about this. And then they continued doing what they were doing before, pretending that everything was okay. So anyway, I didn't plan to endanger anybody for sure. I thought right away I would give this information to certain parties. I thought my name was not even going to get out there associated with it, because like if you give information to the FBI, you don't expect that, you know, everybody is going to hear about this. You expect that this is going to be something secret and that they're going to take action, which they didn't do. And you know, anyway, somehow everything got back to like the auditor, for example, the partner at the auditor. What he did was not to cancel the audit opinions on the bank, but rather to get angry at me and then go around saying, you know, John's a terrible person, he should shut up and so forth. And this is what it turned into. Yeah, so I didn't plan for it to be a dragged out battle. I thought right away everybody was going to drop this bank, but it did turn out to be a big battle. And then, you know, some people have the attitude, including some family members, that I've done something really bad because I've put people in danger, including family members, because, you know, maybe the mafia is going to come after everybody for revenge. So I mean, nothing has actually happened, but anyway, it wasn't the intention. And the fact that it got twisted around, I would say that was the fault of certain organizations that didn't do what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, that can definitely be very hard on you. So once that kind of passed along and that phase was over, are you still with the banking industry, or what's happening currently, and what were the lessons that you learned from that experience?
Well, I've done a variety of things, different entrepreneurial things, which have no relationship to this. But the the project now is related to that, but it's a book project. I mean, I was co-author of a book, and also I'm marketing the book now. So I'm talking with various channels where I'm marketing the book, and it's interesting to learn a new field. So it's like I'm reinventing myself. But yeah, through the entire process, I guess it happened over stages and over years, such that exact points at which things were changing are hard to define. I mean, one thing that's happened for sure is, even though this happened more than 10 years ago, it has not become a non-issue. And the reason why is because the bank is connected with, or was, it failed, it collapsed, as I said it would. But it's turned out to be connected to Vladimir Putin. So that is the reason why it still is something interesting. I mean, certain anecdotal things like, there are certain oligarchs who had relationships with the bank who are currently sanctioned. There are some other one that just came out was Vladimir Putin's yacht in Italy got arrested by the police, seized his yacht. It's a $700 million yacht that's in Italy, and it's at a military base in Italy now, guarded by the police. They said that was Vladimir Putin's yacht. Vladimir Putin's name is not on the documents as the official owner of that yacht. There's a different Russian individual who has his name on that yacht as being the official owner. And he was one of the guys from my bank who received one of these huge loans from my bank that he didn't pay back. So now I've got something which, maybe this is frightening, but the idea was that I have a story that connects up to an important international event that's happening right now, and this makes it marketable. So if we come out with a thriller, and the thriller book has the normal entertainment that's in the thriller, it has the action and suspense, but it also connects up to a real event, then this is something that's going to be entertaining and interesting at the same time.
Definitely. So what would you say were the lessons learned from the experience?
If I were to do it again, if I were to work at a corporation where I knew about a huge fraud that was going on inside the corporation, I would try to expose it, but I would try to do it anonymously. I would try to do it in a way that nobody knew that I was the one who spilled the information. It should be possible in this internet age to do this, just to set up a website, put up a bunch of information on the website, nobody knows who you are, and to get the information out there. And there are some big whistleblowers that have been done like that, where nobody knows who the whistleblower is. I think that's the path to go, because then you've done your duty of doing the whistleblowing. However, you have not put yourself in the firing line.
And that definitely makes sense. So tell us about the book.
Okay, here I've even got the book with me. That's KGB Banker. My co-author, William Burton McCormick, is also from the United States. He lived in Latvia a few years, and he also lived in Ukraine for a few years. He is a suspense and action writer. So he wrote a historical novel about Latvia and Russia, and I read that novel, and I thought it was great. And I knew some people who knew him, so I asked to be introduced to him because, in fact, even friends recommended that this whistleblowing story is something that could be made into a thriller novel. It would be a great thriller novel. So I had a meeting with him. We both went to London, and we spent about a week together at the Latvian House in London. And during this time, we brainstormed about how we could make this into a thriller, who the characters would be, what the steps in it would be, what parts of the real story would be in it and what parts of the real story would not be in it. We put together, I think, an excellent product where we've really combined the two things. We've combined the fun of the thriller novel, and we've also combined some of the true things from the actual story. Another thing is that as far as heroes and villains are concerned, we had some discussion about this. We wound up doing it such that the role of journalism and free media was very important. So we have certain characters in the book where they have different stands for free media or not free media. And this was something that we put in as an important theme. And also the whole thing about integrity in the financial system, about the importance of bankers and auditors and ratings agencies, employees, and regulators who work for governments to have integrity, that when something comes across their desk, which is bad news, not to delete it or shred it or throw it away or pretend that you didn't see it, but to take action on it.
Definitely. So question for you, when was your book released, and where can people find it, and what's happening? What are the next steps for you?
Okay, it's been released in stages. Last fall, first was the print edition. The publisher is Sunbury Press of Pennsylvania. It's on their website. It's also on Amazon. Later, the Amazon Kindle version was released. And just a few weeks ago, the Amazon Audible version was released. So now we've got all three. We have print, Kindle, and Audible. The print one is available from sunburypress.com, and all three versions are available from Amazon. And about the war, by the way, the book, in a way, eerily connects into it because we do have characters who are the oligarchs who are keeping the peace. In fact, we have parts of the book set on the border between Russia and Ukraine, which is near where my co-author was living. He was living in eastern Ukraine, and he captured that area in a wonderful way, I believe. Also, the banking scenes in Riga also tie into the real story because the real money laundering banks were actually in Riga. So what we have is we have a looming conflict in the book, which has turned into a real conflict in real life, although the book came out before the conflict started.
Mm-hmm.
It's timely. Anyway, it's timely and it's topical. So I find people are interested to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. And what's next for you?
Well, the next thing for KGB Banker is translations. So we're right now talking about getting it out in a version in Latvian language and a version in Estonian language. Part of it is in Estonia as well. We'll see what that publisher talks about. I've had requests for other languages as well, such as Russian and Ukrainian and Romanian. Part of the book takes place in Moldova, which is also along the borderline there, and they speak Romanian in that country. So, and with Russians, you know, I have a lot of Russian fans and followers because I am a dissident against the Latvian government still, and a lot of my followers are Russians or ethnic Russians who might be in Latvia, but anyway, they're Russian-speaking families. I do have families from all of these places and people who are concerned about corruption and concerned about how democracy is not working out very well. And these people are interested in the book. So sure, I would love to have versions out in all the locations where the book is. So Russia, Ukraine, Latvian language, Estonian language, Romanian language, those are my goals.
Well, a fascinating story, John. And if you were to leave our listeners with something that they could take home with themselves, what might that be?
Well, something which I have done is I've taken a situation which I would say ended my banking career. So as a banker, it's tough to restart a banking career after a whistleblowing episode. But this is a different way to get restarted, and it's entrepreneurial rather than to be an employee somewhere, is this idea with the book. And the book, I follow other things that happen in media, for example, movies, Netflix serials, things that come out that have been based on real whistleblowing, and there are some. So there are popular things that people read and watch which are with a basis in a real whistleblowing. So there is a market there for that. It is possible to have a product and to make it into a business. So that's what we're doing.
Got it. Well, thank you for joining us, John. And
okay, thank you, Divya. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Would you like to share anything else before we close it out?
Well, just my summary statement was that together with William Burton McCormick, I believe with KGB Banker, we've created an excellent product, something, again, interesting on two levels, because it's got the entertainment of the thriller and it's got elements of a real story where people can think about some things about the society we live in, how the financial sector or how the media can be better in the future, and hopefully the world can be better in the future.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you, listeners, for listening in and tuning in. We appreciate you. And we want to thank Juan for his technical support. And be well and take care. Until next time.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyapark.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyapark.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.